surprised it's not more. I thought I had heard that those kinds of services were
It had
terribly
been,
expensive.
it had really been scrubbed out for the most part, but we had to deal with it. And of course, in the metal itself, or even in the surrounding area, we still have some residual. But it wound up not being, it was a scare at first.
Yeah.
But then the consultants weren't having any problem with it, neither did the state.
Okay, so they'd had some documentation on how
Oh,
it was
yes.
handled before.
Oh, yes. It had been emptied years before.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
If not, I'll put the question. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. And you have a second one, George?
Yes, we do. This one is for the Tucson High School. This is the aging school project that Mr. Powers had more or less watched over the summer. To Floor Systems Incorporated, who are the contractor doing the floor work. The change order is an amount of $6,102.68 for a total contract of amount of $111,058.73.
Motion to approve?
I'll
Is
second.
there a second? Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we are down to
Policies.
policies for approval.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have policies for approval. I'm presenting policy 1315, request to conduct research in Calvert County Public Schools. No public comments have been received, and I'm presenting for approval.
Any discussion? Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion, Mr. Bielanski, second by Mr. McConkey. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried.
Did we just have did we see something come through that someone is requested to do a study in our school system?
We've had a couple, yes, and it gets up to John McClellan's Director of Instructional Technology. There's a form that they fill out, and then we look at that to determine whether or not we will.
Yeah.
We don't do them all.
We
because-
No, and I
We
hope we
can't.
You'd go crazy
adhere
if
to
you
those
did.
procedures
Correct, because it's way too,
yeah.
But if it serves a useful purpose, then we do it.
correct. The second policy is policy 1600, appeals. Again, no public comments have been received. Would like your approval.
Motion?
Motion to approve.
Mr. Shinali moves.
Second.
Mr. McConkey seconds. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried.
The third policy is 3730, education of homeless children and youth. Again, no public comments have been received.
Motion to approve.
Motion, Mr. McConkey.
Second.
Second, Mr. Shinali. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. We're going too fast?
And the last policy is 6036, observation and evaluation of non-administrative certificated employees. And again, no public comments have been received.
Hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Mr. McConkey, second by Ms. Bielanski. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. That was quick. Now we're down to
Now
Is
we're
that
down
it?
to approval
Approval
of
of master plan?
Ms.
who
Worker?
is,
I think each of you have a copy.
we do?
That you've had various sections presented to you over the last several weeks. Are there any questions on the master plan? Follows the same format as last year. Much of it was updated information with updated data from last year. We're continuing with our initiatives and our priorities this year, working on the new teacher principal evaluation, continuing the implementation of Common Core, looking at our cultural proficiency.
So we changed priorities? I didn't really pick up on that.
Well, no, it's a continuation of our priorities, but we have to continue working on the new teacher principal evaluation. That's state mandated, so that will always be in the forefront. Same thing with working on the complete integration of the Common Core state standards.
So when did you get the data from the state? When did that come in? I remember
It comes in at various
We need to
times.
act on this,
you were
right?
waiting on the last pieces.
Yes, yes.
I had sent an email to you. Were you able to include any of that?
Yes,
The section-
in
okay.
the education that is multicultural.
Yes.
I did note that we have hired the acting director of diversity and equity, and what some of her responsibilities would be.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No, I'll take a motion.
When is the deadline to submit?
It is due to the state on Tuesday.
So we're right there. You don't have a choice.
And really, they were waiting, and we had we had it piecemeal.
Yes.
Mr. McConkey moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Zelinski. Any further discussion or any questions? If not, I'll put the question. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Next.
Yeah. No?
No, but it passed. apparently.
Okay.
Your issue is time.
That's how that works.
Time.
One negative
Time to
vote.
review the data. The state did not give us appropriate time.
Okay. Okay. All right, next, policies for review.
We have two policies for review, one being policies 1515, and the second is policy 1320.
Okay, we take 1515 first, is that what?
Absolutely. This is dealing with weapons in Calvert County Public Schools. We've had public comment, and we've also had we had 12 different letters that were sent through webmaster or by emails, or actually that have been mailed.
And we read them all.
You have had copies of all of those. Basically, most of what we have heard doesn't necessarily deal strictly with the policy, but the procedures. And that's something that we have had committees meeting and talking about. We've listened to public comment. We're very aware of the concerns of that. And I think there was some change. I'm hoping that this will suffice, and if not, that will be another conversation that the board will have to have. But the biggest thing that I feel is the procedures, and we've had those discussions of changing those procedures, making sure that age appropriateness is there, making sure that administrators, it's very hard to put a specific time limit on any type of investigation that you're doing because of the nature of the investigation. We would love them to be very quick and to the point, but sometimes that doesn't happen because of the nature of what's happening, especially if it's at the end of a school day and it's ongoing, or it just depends. It's a very difficult thing for administrators. Our utmost concern is the safety of all children, not only the victim, but also the person that is being accused of something. We want to make sure we have the story correct. We want to make sure that we have all the facts. And when we don't have all that, then it doesn't look like we're giving due diligence to our students. We live in a very different time now. School violence, that's all kids hear, that's what teachers hear, it's what parents hear, and we have been given a very difficult charge of assuring that all of our students are safe. And so we want to look at this policy very carefully. We want to do the right thing with the procedures to make sure that we're protecting all of our students.
Well, and I think we know that there's some changes need to be made in the procedures. And I think we certainly listened to what everybody had to say, and there were very good comments and very good suggestions made in the testimony we've had, and also the communications that we've had.
And I can say that the state of Maryland is moving away from, their state regulations are moving away from the zero tolerance, and we will be moving away from zero tolerance.
No question.
I've expressed a number of times here at open session and out in the public my positions on this policy. They have not changed. I still believe that our policy needs to be more specific, that this board needs to exercise its policy responsibility, not just authority, but its responsibility to set a policy that states a clear vision and clear guidance, direction to the school system. I certainly hope that we do not have to wait on approving the revisions to this policy before revisions to the procedures can begin. I don't see a reason for us to have to wait for that. I think it's clear that the procedures are inadequate and are not doing all of our students the best service possible.
I would agree with you.
We
So
agree.
I want to say that I want to express my personal gratitude for all those who came today and who have submitted public comment through the various means that you mentioned earlier. Disappointed that we're unable to, and frustrated that we're unable to read those comments out loud today, but they are part of the record of this meeting, my understanding. I will post those online myself personally and make sure that they're available to anyone who would like to see how other people have viewed this policy and what their thoughts are, because I'm a firm believer that the government should be governed by the people, of the people, for the people. I do want to just reiterate a little bit that I feel and echo some of the comments that are made here orally today, that we need to be focused on finding ways to partner with the parents to address these concerns and address these situations. And every single time we have an incident, we need to be looking at how we can turn this into a lesson for the students, and not just the students who are actually involved, but other students around them are involved. I completely agree that while someone may feel fearful, that if they're feeling fearful despite the fact that they were in no danger, then we as a school system, or we as a school system in partnership with the parents, can educate those students better and explain that they were not in danger. I think that could have some long-lasting positive for those who feel in danger as well. And I think that goes back to notifying the parents as soon as possible. I understand we need to have that there's times where notifying the parent can hinder the investigation is much of the position I hear from school staff. I think that clearly can be the case in some situations, but I think we have to establish this partnership. So that I feel the school system is moving towards building better partnerships with a lot of our stakeholders, whether that's with the Teachers Association or with the community organizations around here. That should be a hallmark of the system, and we need to make sure we're doing everything we can to build partnerships with our parents as well. We certainly do when they're getting bad grades or they're not getting their homework done. We should be able to do that with these types of discipline issues as well. With that said, I do feel we need to be more specific in the policy, but I certainly hope to see procedural changes soon.
Have you, we're sort of at disagreement about how the policy should be worded. So maybe if you would propose how you think being more specific would make this a better policy, then I would have a better idea of that. I mean, not now, you can
Sure.
send it.
Well, I'm trying not to repeat myself too much. A month ago, I spoke about getting the words intent in there, capacity. I've spoken about 30-minute limit. I've heard from a lot of staff. I'm not sure that 30 minutes, even then I was a little hesitant if 30 minutes is possible. I think I would feel comfortable in saying that the school system should notify the parents as soon as they feel the threat, if there was a threat, as soon as they can comfortably say that they know, that reasonably believe students are safe. Whether that means that if there was an actual weapon, that weapon is now secured, and that they are sure that there is no other weapon.
But what we've heard repeatedly from the principals is that it's never, any one case is never an easy investigation. So a gun may be in the school, or a look-alike gun may be in the school, but who brought that to the school, who saw it, who was in, how the tentacles can reach pretty far afield. And the principal's main concern is, like you said, securing the school, making sure that everyone is safe, and then making sure that the investigation is complete so that false accusations aren't made. And that, because that's the worst, is to falsely accuse someone. And that they're accurately reporting to the parent, once they do make that call, what transpired.
And the problem is that in the policy, every case is different. I think the key thing, though, is 2 words. We really
Common
need to
sense.
use common sense.
Common sense, absolutely.
Common sense is the key words here. These are kids we're dealing with, and we want to do right by our children. And that's the whole motive here. And I think we'll come up with something good.
Well, I'm a little disappointed I didn't get to see the letters, like they never got forwarded to me. And I'm the one that did make the suggestion.
Karen, should-
What?
I'm so, I apologize, I thought.
Yeah, because I
We
wasn't
should
the
have
one
done
that made the, I was the one that suggested the different definition. And I haven't seen the letter, so I don't know how to comment. But there has been no further changes since the change in the definition. So I'm not sure how the comments were used, and I don't know what the timeline for the procedures is. I would appreciate I think that people want to know what the timeline is, because I think people are afraid that this is going to happen again. So I think specifically the notification, I think 30 minutes might be a little harsh, but I think 30 minutes is not a lot of time. But I think like you might have to have, I think 1 business day, 24 hours. I think that's more reasonable, because I'm not sure, is the principal responsible for ever notifying the parent? Can they wait
Yes.
a week?
The
So-
principal is responsible for notifying the parent in any situation dealing with a discipline issue.
But technically it could go on, they could wait a week or longer.
No,
No.
no,
They-
no.
There's
Well,
nothing in our policies or even in our
How lo-
procedures
how
that
long do
outline
they
a
have-
specific time.
how long do
That's
they-
not outlined, but we try to do it as soon as possible, as soon as we have concluded the investigation and we have all of the pieces.
But if a week is as soon as possible, then wouldn't that
No, no,
necessarily?
Well, I don't think we've ever,
I know, but I don't think people would have thought that, I don't know, I don't want to comment on anything specific, but I don't think parents would probably think that they would assume 24 hours, I would think, or they would assume 1 business day. So I think you're assuming that it's 1 week,
no.
that it's within 1 week.
No, we've never, any time that there's, we try to contact the parent as soon as possible, as soon as that investigation is concluded, because we do not ever want to have unknowns and things that aren't true out there. We want to make sure we have the facts. Now, do I say that in the past, things maybe have not been handled properly? Absolutely, I understand that, and that's why we're having these discussions now. But you also, there's 2 sides to this. You have a victim and you have a perpetrator. And a lot of what's happening with some of these policies is the victims are not being addressed. If someone feels threatened, whether it's a gesture, whether they feel threatened, and that is something that the school system has to address, and we have to be able to address it. As I said,
To notify the
it's a
parent.
we have to walk very, and for us to be able to say, well, what was the intent? How do I know what the intent is? I can't read somebody's mind, what their intention was. What we would like to hope, and that we have our administrators who are questioning children and asking questions, that they would be able to ascertain, well, was this really a threat? Or was this, hey, we'll try to make this a teachable moment? And we're getting that. We understand that. As the policy was written before and the procedures that were in place, the administrators didn't have that flexibility. And that's why we need to change it, and we understand that. But the board makes the policy, the school system makes the procedures. And you have to pass a policy first before we can write the procedures.
It should
And if we
happen.
don't like the procedures, we'll go back and change the policy.
Correct. If you don't like the procedures that we put forth as a school system, you certainly have that right to say, we don't like that.
I know, and I never wanted, I don't agree with Mr. Schnelli. I don't think anything about, I think intent, I agree with you, Ms. Highsmith, that intent shouldn't be included in the policy. But I just think that the main concerns with the hand gestures, the notification, the 0 tolerance, I don't know if they've been fully addressed, and I think that this is definitely going to, I think people definitely want it to occur at the next meeting if we approve the policy. They want to.
And when I say intend, I'm not saying that because someone did not intend to do something wrong, doesn't mean they should be held harmless for it either. They did something wrong. There should be consequences, but intent should be considered when they're deciding what level of consequences.
Sensible consequences.
Sensible consequences. And the only way to be sensible is to take every factor into account.
Exactly.
Can you summarize the process that we've been through when, when we first started to address this issue, which was several months ago? We convened a committee.
There was a committee that was convened of high school principals, middle school principals, elementary school principals, members of the CAC, and I was there, Ms. Roof was there, Mr. Titus, Larry Titus, who is also in student services, and we looked at the policy, and there was a very clear message that the high school level felt that they know better, that students at the high school level know what is appropriate and what isn't. Where it really changed was the middle school and the elementary school levels. The
For
elementary
the
school.
lookalikes? You mean?
Pardon me?
For the lookalikes or just weapons
For all
in
of
general?
it. No,
Okay.
just for all of it. And they agreed that we needed to have specific language about lookalikes. They did agree with that. They did not want anything about intent at all, because we're not mind readers. We can't say, well, what was the intent? I don't know what the intent was. If I said, if a student came in and said, oh, I would never hurt that person, and I went to a parent and said, oh, that's a good kid, that would never happen, and something did happen, then the credibility. I mean, we have to take every situation seriously. We have to look at all angles of it, and we can't jump to conclusions. And depending on, and we really, our teachers and our administrators really tried very hard to do that. We're here to educate children. That's our job. We're not the police. We're not. We are not the police. And I showed you, and there, if you go on to Baltimore City website, the police department, there are some look-alike weapons out there that look like toy guns, and it's scary.
Or they're real weapons.
But they're real. They
That
are
look like,
absolutely
yeah,
real.
toys.
And, as educators, we're not looking at that. I mean, we just want to make sure our kids are safe. Bottom line, we just want to make sure our kids are safe.
And that's why we need to focus on the threat rather than the object itself.
Correct. And that they don't feel that they're threatened, absolutely. Because, what one person perceives as a threat, to another person, it might not be that. So we have to take into
Perception is very
account
important. That's right.
every person's perception. Whether we agree that it's their perception or not. I mean, we have to value if a child says, I'm scared, we have to take that into account. We can't say, oh, you're fine, there's no problem. We have to try to work with
Perception is
that
reality.
child. Absolutely, it's their reality.
But we do owe it to that child to explain to them that they were not actually, that there's no reason to believe, and, have that conversation. And I'm not saying every time that its finger is being used as a gun, we tell them, hey, you're not in any danger. But we can look at each of these situations. Again, it's situation by situation.
Absolutely.
And we can let that person know that they are
And
not.
that's what we do. And that's what we try to do. We try very hard to do that. I can tell you that there's been lots of cases where the person didn't, quote, intend to threaten somebody or make it a threat, but the person that it was directed to felt threatened.
Oh, yeah.
And that has to be addressed.
And there's many cases that we've been hearing anecdotally, I can't say that word, where we've diffused the issue in the school, and the victim's parents came down very hard on us because they felt we had not done enough. So we're sort of caught in the middle.
As I said, we're kind of caught.
Where you try to apply a reasonableness to the discipline, And for some, it's too much, for some, it's not enough. So it's a fine line.
It
that they
is.
went.
It's a
But
very
we are in the
difficult-
process of giving more authority, in essence,
Yes.
to the people in the building.
People on site. Right.
So will we see changes in the procedures soon?
Absolutely. We can start working on it.
Once we get,
But you have to pass the
Disapproved.
policy first.
So
so if you want to make changes, then you need to.
Also, the policies, in the past, they've only been reviewed every 4 years.
Three.
Every
Every
three.
three.
Well, we can review a policy at
Every
any time,
time.
and we
Sure.
can change it at any time. So if this policy's changed and it's not working, and the public starts contacting us, we're gonna look at it again. We're gonna review it until we get it right. So, if you contact us, we're gonna respond to you.
We don't have to change a policy to change procedures, is that correct?
No.
No, but I think this policy needed to be changed because of the way weapons was defined.
What Ed did, he just
Yeah,
he
Ed's
split it up.
language,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and my only other question was, out of all the comments, did anyone suggest any changes to the policy, not the procedures, the policy? Were there any suggested changes in addition
I
to
don't
the
think so,
policy?
no.
No.
Basically, it all dealt with procedural changes.
Right.
And
was-
and code of conduct. There
And
was
the no
one that was
tolerance
about
piece and code of conduct changes, and that's all part of procedures.
the classification system that we have in the code of conduct. There were several good suggestions for that.
Yes, there were.
Oh, what's your pleasure? Do you want to act on the policy today?
I don't
I don't think we're
I
on
don't think
agreement.
they're, I
We're
don't
not
think
there
you're in
now.
agreement.
Yeah, I think we need to
So
talk about it more.
Well, who's not in agreement?
I don't know that we're not, I don't think we're unanimous, but that doesn't mean we can't get a vote. And can I ask a couple questions about the policy as written? So we've read a lot of recommendations for procedure, and we've talked about a lot of recommendations for procedures.
Where they fit.
Is this policy language as proposed going to give the school system the latitude to write the procedure the way you're hearing we want it?
That's
Yes,
the question.
Yes, we believe it to be, yes.
Well, if that's the question, I say pass the policy.
We'll
Let's get going on the procedures.
Do the procedures, I don't believe they do now, will they address things like a picture of a weapon on a magazine or a picture of a weapon on clothing?
I think it needs to be very specific. The procedure needs to be very specific so people understand it.
Because not every picture of a weapon is in a threatening way, but I've plenty of stories from parents who say that it's been viewed that way simply because it was a weapon. A fishing knife on a fishing magazine or a rifle on a T-shirt that has the likeness of
Well, we
a
have,
Marine
we have
in a
dress
memorial.
code, we have dress code guidelines, and the dress code guidelines, it's very specific about violence and alcohol and drugs and et cetera.
My point is, not every picture of it contains a weapon is a violent image.
Yeah, I
There's-
didn't say that.
Right,
it was.
That's why
right. But
they-
I'm hearing from people who say that there are times where the school is treating a picture of a weapon that's not in a violent manner. They're treating it black and white. It's a weapon.
As I
It's gotta
said,
be
as
gone.
the policy was written before, there wasn't a whole lot of leeway, and there was very strict.
So I'm asking, is that going to be, if it's a
And those
picture of a
procedures.
weapon that's not being used in a threatening or violent
If
way?
it's not being used in a threatening or violent way, I would see no reason why anyone would be disciplined for that.
But it's happening.
But the case law is all over the map. And even the federal circuit courts, you get one decision in the Fourth Circuit, one in the Ninth Circuit on the West Coast, you might have a totally different opinion of it. So that's why it's very
There's a lot of
difficult.
nuts at that level. I want to take care of it this
Well,
way.
I know,
As
but
far
I'm
as-
saying it's very difficult to,
As far as the policy goes, our policy basically says we don't allow weapons on school property, look-alike or not. That's just like our policy says we don't allow bullying. It's up to the people, the adults in the building, if, there's all sorts of questions about what constitutes bullying as well. Just like there's all sorts of questions on whether a gun in a magazine, constitutes a threat. So it's up to the adults in the building, and we think that we're going a long way by putting the age appropriateness statement in and putting the zero,
No
getting,
zero tolerance.
getting rid of the zero tolerance.
I don't think
To
there's age
correct that.
appropriateness in the policy.
Not the policy,
Oh.
the procedure,
Common
I'm
sense.
saying. By putting those things in the new procedures, then that reflects, that goes across several of our disciplinary policies.
I agree, and the notification of parents should go across all of our policies on discipline as well.
Is a hand gesture in the form of a gun, is that considered a look-alike weapon? Because I think that you would then have to change the definition to any implement or gesture visible or concealed. I don't
One
think
of
you
the
can-
things that was brought up in the committee was that somebody, let's say somebody walks through that back door and they put their finger underneath their coat and they come in here and say, okay, everybody, go to the floor,
Hit the
everybody
floor.
hit the floor. And there's no weapon, but it's sure perceived as a
But
threat.
that's why, according to
Okay.
that, it's not in the policy, which is why you would want to add that. You would, an implement.
But not me, I don't make the
Okay, well,
policy.
okay, well, if
We
you
make the
were on
policy.
the board, you would
Well, we
want to
want
add
you
that
to do it.
because
Yeah.
as of right now, implement does not include a gesture according to the definition. You have to add any implement or
Okay.
gesture.
Yeah,
So back to Mrs. Highsmith's scenario, and that happens, and we all hit the ground because school board shootings have happened before. And then in the investigation, there is no gun, but we were all threatened. And so I think it would fall under the policy of harassment and threatening and harassment, or whatever that the other one.
But,
So
but we're going to extremes. That is a crime.
Yeah, it is.
What we're talking about here, we're not talking about crimes. We're not talking about kids pretending to shoot each other in a playful way. That's not a crime. Coming in here and pretending
And
and
telling you to
causing
To
a
harm
massive
somebody.
disturbance,
Whole different-
coming here and yelling fire
disruption.
is a crime. We can go to extremes both ways all the time. That's not going to help us.
well, but one child turning to another child and saying, "I'm going to kill you next time I see you,"
I have no problem
that's a
with that.
threat.
Student-
That's a threat, and it should be treated that way, but not as I don't think
You're
that's
right.
a gun violation. It's
correct.
You're right.
or a weapons violation, but it's definitely a threat. Whether the child intended it or intends to actually do it or not, or what, that is still, but it's not within this policy. Is that,
Yeah, so I mean, I guess that's another policy, but if that's another policy, if it's not in this policy, it's in another policy, and I think the people would want us to review that, so I think at the next meeting that we should review that policy as well, because I think what we're hearing from the comments that I've heard, people have issues with the hand gestures, and we're not even looking at that issue right now. And even if we approve this, we're still not looking at it, because we're just looking at the procedure of this one, which
What-
wouldn't cover the hand gestures.
Well, this is
Agree. What
dealing with
policy
weapons.
is that?
This is
So,
dealing with
okay.
weapons.
definitely.
And theoretically, the hand gesture could be a look-alike weapon.
No, because it's not an
No.
implement though. An implement, according to the definition, is not, it would be a piece of equipment, and this isn't a piece of equipment. It's part of your body. So a gesture is not a piece of equipment. So I don't think you can classify it as a look-alike weapon, and I don't think that the schools
So it's just a
have
threat.
classified it as a look-alike weapon, but people have an issue with that. So we have to look at that policy too, and I think we need to look at it next month.
What policy is that?
We'll
I'm
have to
looking
go
for
look.
it right now.
I'd be
I
happy to make
think
a
it would-
motion that we open that policy for review.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, where are we gonna go with this now? Do you wanna,
So does this mean we
do
can
you wanna
vote on
put
this
this policy into effect and then,
I think we need to
Begin
take some
writing
action.
the
We either
reg-
need to send it back to staff for further revision, or we need to vote on it.
what's your pleasure?
Mine is revision.
If you wanna get started on writing the procedures, we need to pass the policy today. Then you can come back and change the policy if we're not satisfied. Or do you wanna just
I still disagree
send
with
it back?
that, but
Okay, you wanna,
I believe they can start working on procedures before a new policy is. I mean, there's a policy that exists right now.
Right, and in that policy, a weapon is a look-alike too, and they're both treated exactly the same, by definition.
Well, do you want to try a motion?
We're meeting next week, are we?
Have we ever looked at what other
We're
counties?
not-
Oh, but that's
we
at
weren't.
We're not gonna meet,
CSM.
that's
That's
for the
right.
college, so none of this stuff will come up.
Have we ever
I mean-
looked at what other counties' policies say and do? By any
I'm sure we
chance?
have.
We can.
Be curious to see that.
I've
Well,
looked
this
at-
is the
look at
third,
it.
this is the
Look
third
at it.
time we've brought this policy to our board meeting, isn't it?
There are different counties have different styles of policies. Our policies, for the large part, are extremely vague and provide little more than a mission statement, I would say. And they don't provide much guidance. And that's a lot of our policies. And there are other counties that are very similar. I see other counties that have almost verbatim what we have, but I see other counties that their policies are much more detailed. I see different levels of detail and different levels of direction that they provide. Our policy really just provides some definitions, and then sets a mission statement saying we aim to not have weapons on our schools, in our school system. And I think that's everybody should figure that one out. Do they really need to elect 5 people to come up with a policy like that?
Am I getting from this that you want to send it back to staff for further,
I move that we adopt the policy today.
okay?
I
Move.
second.
Is there a second? All right, any further discussion? I'll put the question. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
It's an opinion, but
Nay.
I'm a nay.
So you leave it to me.
Hmm?
I say we pass the policy today. Get going on writing the procedures. We can come back and change it. Okay?
And we can still do on
Sure.
our own. You know, you can make recommendations, Ed can make more recommendations if he wants. We'll look at other school systems just on our own.
I think
I'm very
there's
eager to
enough-
see the procedures, and so the idea here is if we don't like those procedures,
Correct.
I can
We'd
make
like-
have
another
input.
motion, just like I did
Correct.
2 months ago, and make
I
another
think there's
motion.
enough
and open this
concern
back
here that
up.
we need to get started on the policies now. And we can always come back on the procedures
Because
now.
the old policy is still in effect.
Yeah,
Well, not anymore.
Not anymore,
Well,
right now. So the motion carried, Dr. Carroll?
yes, it does.
Thank you.
3-2. Okay. Appeal 1317. This is, of course, who has the motion?
Except for what?
The appeal.
I think we have another policy still.
Oh, we have another
We have another
policy?
policy.
yeah,
Oh,
there was
sorry.
another policy for
And I
I'm
did
sorry,
that
I'm
motion.
sorry. We do.
It was policy
1320, we sure do.
statement 1320.
I got you.
Regarding permitting the superintendent to act for the board.
There are no proposed changes from staff?
No. There were no proposed changes.
So it's the same as it was before?
For federal and
No
state
changes?
funds.
Do I hear a motion?
I think,
So this is to put it forward for public comment for the next month.
Correct. It has to go forward
Oh,
for
yeah,
public
yeah,
comment
yeah.
for 30 days.
I'm off here, thinking about something else. Okay, anything?
Make a
That's good.
motion to approve?
No, it
No,
needs to
no,
be
it
out
needs
for
to be
public.
review.
Oh,
I don't
just-
have any
Yeah, I made a
objections.
mistake.
I don't
30
have any
days.
objections.
Okay, well then move on to appeal. The appeal,
I'm-
1317.
I have the motion. I move that we uphold the decision of the superintendent in appeal number 1317 and further direct legal counsel to prepare findings of facts and conclusions of law consistent with our decision for our review and adoption.
Is there a second?
Second?
Second? Ms. Polinsky? And Ms. McGuire, seconds. Any discussion further? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Okay, now we're down to enrollment reports.
Our projection for this upcoming school year was 15,940 students. At the end of September, our enrollment count was at 15,870, which means we're about 70 students under projection.
And you said that was an estimate? What are we waiting on?
FTE.
We're waiting on the FTD.
FTE?
FTEs, yes, FTEs, yes. And what that is, these are school accounts, and we have to make sure that all of our students are accounted for. So that this is an estimate. We will have a
Full-time
actual,
equivalent.
pardon?
Full-time equivalent.
Full-time accrual, I understand that, but does this mean that we're not sure that some of these kids are still enrolled, or that we
These
don't know?
are the warm body counts that are in the schools. So there could be some students that we have not accounted for yet, that pupil services is working through. They're looking to make sure that our rolls are accurate, because we have to submit to the state our final numbers.
So we think this is a minimum number?
Yeah. I
Like
would-
it could go up,
It
not
could go
go
up, but I'm being hopeful that, no.
Should be
this
pretty
is-
close by now.
It should be close, because all through the month of September, those pupil service workers were contacting families, et cetera, to see who really is still enrolled, not, if they've
Right.
moved from the state, et cetera.
So how much revenue have we lost from the state then?
570,000.
You got the figure right there.
Do that math.
Quick.
Well, that's what she told us this morning.
I have a question. Northern High School is reported at 1476. The new building's going to be built at a capacity of 1500. But if you look at, we're dealing with the large growth at the Beach Elementary School, and I believe that most of those students would then go to Northern High School. So by the time we build that facility, isn't it already going to be over capacity? And
We're
that
seeing a
We're already
lot
looking at
of
that now.
growth. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of growth in the northern end, where
Yeah.
the southern end, we're not seeing growth.
So has it been considered to maybe the Northern High School? I know that since they already have the plan, I'm sure that they decide that it's pretty set on the 1500, but has it been discussed maybe like 1600 or a larger capacity?
That can be adjusted.
Yeah, we've talked to George about that.
Well, it's been our policy in this county to shy away from the large high schools. We want to try to keep them within a certain size. So I thought, that was one of the first questions I asked when I first moved into this county 10, 15 years ago. And they said, they went and looked at the 2,000 and up high schools. They felt they were more like, little mini cities. We wanted to keep it more of a personable environment. And we have schools in the south that are rated at 1,500 that have about 1,100 right now. So it looks like, we might have to rearrange things. But northern, the build schedule is quite a few years away, so. But point well taken.
Okay. Down to personnel reports.
And I think the ed specs that we put up, was also looked at by the committee from the community.
Good afternoon, Dr. Carroll, Ms. Highsmith, and members of the board. You have before you a report of last month's personnel actions for support employees for informational purposes. And in addition, you also have a record of proposed actions for certificated employees that will require action by the board. In addition, you have one item that's extra this month, and that is also our emergency coaches that will need your approval. So at this time, I defer to Ms. Highsmith for her recommendation.
I recommend for approval
Of the vote?
of the professional employee.
Professional? Okay. Is there a
We need
motion?
separate, are we looking for two, one for the coaches and one for the,
They're two separate.
Okay,
Yes.
take the professional first.
Professional employee personnel action first.
move we approve?
Second.
Ms. McGuire, Mr. Shinali seconds. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Okay, the coaches, do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve?
Motion, Mr. McConkey,
Second?
second, Ms. Blazinski. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. And
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
And then comments by the board.
No
Yep.
comment.
Start down there. Ms.
No
Wood?
comment.
No comment?
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Johnson and Mr. Forrest, Dr. Johnson from Calvert High School, and Mr. Forrest from Patuxent High School for going to the Maryland Association of Boards of Education and taking students from their Minority Achievement Committee and the Minority Scholarship Cohort Program to talk to board members across the state about these programs and what they're doing for students in our high schools. The students were fabulous. They wowed the board members across the state. And as I understand it, the Maryland Association of Boards of Education would like us to come back again next year and present the program again so that we can spread the word about student achievement and student leadership. And thank you, Nancy, for supporting it.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
I have a few things. One, again, I just want to reiterate my appreciation for those who took the time to have their voice heard on the weapons policies.